Hi guys, Darrell Smith here again from South Dakota. This is part of my goal in recording these little videos is to document different events in my life. And this one may be kind of boring for most of you, but it happened, and you can turn it off anytime you want to. Early on, when I started with Northwest Airlines, a friend asked me to come down to Northfield, Minnesota, to look at it as a place that we might want to live. Well, we liked the town, and we found a little house. It was a two-story house, had a walkout basement that had two little apartments downstairs. They weren't renting for very much money, but we weren't making very much money. That first year with Northwest, I made $500 a month. So we were scraping by. In some way, we made a deal to get this house, and we moved into Northfield, into that little house. It served us well. It was shelter for us. However, it had its drawbacks. For one thing, it did not have a garage. And as you can imagine, in Minnesota, the weather gets bad and the snow blows, and so it was tough when you get ready to go to work, you go out and you dig your car out first and then scrape all the ice off of the windows, and that was not a lot of fun. Well, we lived there. It served us well. We lived there for quite a while, and somehow, I'm not sure how we were. Maybe they went to the same church as we did. The Vikings, Dick and Bev Viking, lived out in the country. They lived on they had built a house on a 40-acre farm. They had built it pretty much. They were the general contractors for building their own houses. I don't know why they wanted to sell it and do something else, but we got wind of it and we talked with them. And again, we could not afford it. We took a long walk in the park and said, should we do this? We did it. So we bought the acreage and their house. It was initially a 40-acre farm, but there was one house lot, I suppose it was an acre, that had already been sold off and other people lived there. And Dick and Bev wanted to keep a lot so that they could build another house. And so we finally decided to buy the house and did. While they were still living in it, before we made the transition, I asked if I could come out and work on the yard. And they said, of course, and they were good people, nice to live with, nice neighbors. Anyway, I was out there early on one afternoon, and I don't know, doing some yard work or something, and a little thunderstorm moved across just to the north of the house there, and it was rumbling a little bit, and I noticed or saw out the trailing edge of that thunderstorm, a tornado came out, a funnel cloud, and snaked its way to the ground and traveled on the ground for several miles. I thought that was quite an interesting event. I'd never seen that before. Later on, I found out that it had gone through a trailer park and had, unfortunately, one child had been killed. Well, we moved into that house and enjoyed it a lot. We had one lazy Sunday afternoon. For us, it was raining outside a lot. It had been raining a lot that day. And we were Viking football fans, and we had just turned on the game or were ready for the game to come on. And I took a comfortable position on the couch downstairs, and much to my surprise, a trail of water came running across the floor. Well, of course, that was an emergency. We jumped up and we started mopping and doing what we could do, but it would not stop. It just kept coming and coming and coming. I was panicked, so I went outside in the rain, pouring rain, and dug down past the foundation right at the back door, and then took a sledgehammer and hammered my way through the foundation of the house before the floor, below the flooring platform. Boy, when I finally broke through, water poured out of there under pressure, and almost immediately the water in the house started to so slowed up. The amount of water coming in the house and it slowed up, and in only a few minutes it had stopped completely. We had the water table around the house had risen above the floor level in the house, so water was being forced in there. But I relieved that pressure, and we never had that problem again. Well, there's a lot of things that happened while we were in that house, and none of them very exciting probably. But one of the things I did was to try my hand at bow hunting. And I think I've talked about that before. Larry Gibson, a friend of mine, and I tried to learn how to shoot the bow years ago. Well, around the house was farmland and thickets, trees, small woods, and some swampy areas too. It's perfect land for the white-tailed deer. And they were there. You'd see their tracks everywhere, and you'd see them quite often in the fields and even around the houses. So one day I decided to take to go bow hunting, and I went only 200, 300 yards from the house and found a big tree that had a low limb that was big, and I could get it, not very, it was pretty low, so I could get on it. So I stood up on that limb and leaned against that tree. Well, no deer came by, and it was getting pretty boring, and I was pretty tired there. But all at once, squirrels, 2 of them I think, started chasing all around me. I thought maybe it's probably some sort of sexual maneuvers they were doing there, sexual activity. But they ran up trees and down trees and around trees, and on 2 different occasions they came up my tree and they ran up the entire length of my body, seemingly not even noticing that I was there. So they'd come up and go climb up my leg and over my shoulder and up, and that would be, they did it real quick. But I don't think they ever knew that they had climbed a human being into that tree. Well, we had 40 acres, and there was farmable land. I don't know how much, 15 or 20 acres of farmable land. I had no farm equipment. So I became acquainted with John Harkness. John was a big man. He was gruff. He didn't put up with any bullshit. He told you what he thought. But he had which hand? His right hand maybe was missing from the wrist down. And the story of that was he was combining in the field, it was windy, and something went wrong and he needed to clear the problem. So there was a shield, maybe they're big shields, and it's a big machine. So a shield over an area, maybe 4x4, that shield was that big. Well, he opened the shield and raised it up, and there's a latch, and he latched it up. And he was looking or clearing the problem, and the wind was blowing, and some way it fluttered the shield into the air, and it came down and hit John on the head and the back of his shoulder, head and shoulders and back. And to catch himself, he just automatically put his hand up, and he put it into a bunch of pulleys. He left the machine running, and it clipped his hand off smoothly. It said, they told the story that he picked up his hand, which was in the glove, stuck it under his arm, and then held the wrist with his other hand, that was remaining till he got to the house and got it taken care of. On that little farm, well, I guess I should complete. John would farm my place. He had the equipment, and he'd come in and he would plow it and plant it and harvest it. But in return for that, I drove his tractors and I drove his combines lots of hours in his fields when I wasn't flying, and I helped him a lot, but he certainly helped me a lot. John was killed. Some way he was in his barn with the tractor, and he triggered something that either the barn or the door or something collapsed on him, and it took his life. On that farm, I don't know how I came up with the idea, but I decided to plant some walnut trees. Back in the back, I planted about 40 black walnut trees. I remember we planted them, and then I wanted to water them a little bit, so I put a tank of water in the back of the truck and hooked up some sort of hose system. And our daughter, Kelly, was to put water on the plants themselves as I moved the truck slowly through the field. Well, some way I didn't do it right. The valve broke and spilled all the water, and I was frustrated, and I yelled at Kelly. And it wasn't her fault, but I yelled at her, and I felt bad until right now that I did that. It was in frustration, and I just lashed out. Another little activity that we tried, we built a fireplace down in the basement. I did that. And we put a wood burning, actually it wasn't a fireplace, it was a bricked in area in the corner, and built a hearth, and we put a wood burning stove there, and it worked really good too. But two or three of us guys that were kind of friends, we got all the equipment together using my truck. We'd go out into the woods and cut a dead tree down, and we'd cut it up into firewood sections and bring it home. Well, I remember one time, I don't know how efficient this was. I remember one time we were in the woods, and I backed up to a tree that we'd cut down, and I didn't know it, but there had been an old building there, and so some of the boards were still laying on the ground. So we loaded up wood. I took it home, and when I got home, 3 out of the 4 tires were hissing, losing air. So the money it cost me to fix my tires probably was not even close to the money we saved cutting our own firewood. But we had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to cut in camaraderie to harvest that wood. We had a horse. I can't remember how we got the horse, but she was hard-headed. Our son, Darrel, he was, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old, tried to ride her, or did ride her, and we gave him back to the barn. She was anxious to get in her stall, and he couldn't stop her, and she went in and turned both of his legs, both his feet, almost backwards. Oh, it made me mad. She would not, I pulled her out of that pen, and I rode her as hard as I could across the fields, and I brought her back, and she was winded a little bit. Didn't break her spirit. She still was strong-headed and did what she wanted to do. I was flying, and I told the story to a captain. I was a second officer, first year, hadn't even gotten off of probation. I told him about the horse, and I didn't want her. And he talked about it. He said, tried to make a deal that he'd take her. I said, I'll give her to you. And I said, she's free. So she came down, backed the trailer up, and we had a heck of a time getting her in that trailer. And finally, we did. Now, this is a free horse now. I had a saddle. He, as a captain, was making 3-4 times more money than me. And I said, it was a nice saddle. I said, do you want the saddle? I'll sell it to you for $30. And he said, I don't know. I'll give you $15 for it. Oh, that made me angry. I just gave him a horse, and here he is chewing me down on a $30 saddle. I just threw the saddle up over the end of the trailer, and I said, it's free. Now get the hell off of my property. Anyway, that's a little happening there. Well, our drive was maybe 200 yards long, 300 yards long. And it was situated just so the northwest wind would stack drifts into that driveway, and it was a lot of work to keep it open. Well, the kids went off to college, and Glenda's out there in the country by herself. I'm gone probably half the time, and she's blocked in. She can't get out, doesn't know how to move or not able to move the snow out of the trail. So it got to be a nuisance to live in the country. So we put the house up for sale, and it sold. And we moved to town. We're now city folks. That's the story of our little farm. Thank you.